Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codaspoti, and today's guest is Lauren Coulter. She's the owner, integrator, and Chief Biscuit Eater at Biscuit Belly, a Southern-inspired, fast casual dining concept that began in 2020 in Louisville, Kentucky. Biscuit Belly focuses on serving scratch-made biscuits and a unique brunch menu, bringing authentic Southern flavors to communities near and far. The company's mission is to deliver memorable meals that unite people over delicious food, all while nurturing a strong community connection. Lauren's journey from pharmacy to restaurant ownership is incredible, highlighting her passion for quality food and dedicated community involvement. Her achievements include owning previous establishments like Louisville, which quickly became a local favorite. She's also celebrated for her hands-on leadership style. Lauren's story of transitioning careers and thriving in the hospitality world is sure to inspire you. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. Now back to our guest today, the Chief Biscuit Eater at Biscuit Belly. Lauren, I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Thanks. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
It's all about sacrifice, huh?
Yep.
All right. So, Lauren, tell us in your own words, what is Biscuit Belly?
Oh, man. Biscuit Belly is an incredible breakfast option that really pulls together unique flavors, a really chef-driven menu with the fast casual concept. So we want it to be delicious, and we want to be able to get you in timely, so sort of in and out quickly. You don't have to have this long experience for it to be a great, fulfilling experience overall. So we focus down on big hearty biscuit sandwiches, and we have a variety of other options for healthier, lighter eaters as well.
And so is this strictly breakfast? Does it go into lunch?
We do have some lunch options. So we focus down on breakfast, brunch, lunch. We close around 2 to 3, depending on the day of the week. So lunch, people come to us because they love our house-made biscuits. So they're coming in. They know that if they're coming in for breakfast or lunch, they might not need to eat for the rest of the day, maybe something light for dinner. So it is a full meal, and it's a delicious one.
Okay, I'm looking at the menu on your website here. You got to tell me what a bonut is.
Couple of things with the bonuts. So the bonuts are just small biscuits that we fry up, kind of like donuts. But for us, on the backside of the curtain, they're also a good way for us to avoid having waste. So when we are cutting biscuits, there's only a certain amount of time that you can knead dough before it gets overworked. And so we cut out biscuits, and then we do one refold and recut, but then there's all this excess dough. So we use that to cut these tiny biscuits, and that's what we use for our bonuts.
Because something happens to the quality of the biscuit if you were to take sort of those scrap pieces and try to put them back together to make more biscuits from it.
Yes, it gets overworked. It's not the same. It doesn't rise. So this is just a way as an operator to mitigate waste and to also offer something sweet at the end of your meal if you are so inclined.
What would people find on the healthier side of things? Because, I'm looking at your menu here, and I wasn't hungry before we started this interview, but there's a lot of really good looking yes. And I love breakfast sandwiches, and you guys have a lot of great ones here. But if somebody's looking for something maybe a little bit on the lighter side, what might that look like?
Oh, yes. We've got 3 different omelets. One's a veggie omelet, and that is one of my go-tos. It's not our kind of take on it is an inside-out omelet. So have you ever gotten an omelet like in a big line, like at a hotel, and it's kind of has this weird look about it. Like, to
Say
me,
more.
omelets often, they can look a little odd. And so my big thing was, I just don't want it to look like a weird hotel omelet. And so we do this play on like an inside out omelet where a lot of the ingredients are on top. So you feel that freshness of those ingredients. We have one that's got I believe, some pork called the Smoke Show. And then we have one more that is escaping me. My other go-to, though, is our bowls. So you can kind of build your own breakfast bowl, but they have a base of either grits or our fried, like our home fries. And so if you do grits, you can get vegetables all on it. I usually get an over easy egg and some guacamole. It is so good. So yeah, those are my two faves.
And it looks like you've got some interesting coffee drinks here too.
Oh man. So our coffee is so good. I will say, recently we did kind of a coffee and cocktail overhaul and really tried to tap into a little bit more of what the consumer is leaning into. So I'm sure you've seen in every corner the brown sugar shaken type of drinks, or we added in a espresso martini, which is super fun. We serve it in a rocks glass, with a couple pieces of espresso beans on the top, and it's delightful.
Now you say martini. Is there alcohol in it?
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay, so your locations have a liquor license.
Correct. So that's one of the differentiators of Biscuit Belly. If you'll notice, some of the bigger brands have recently started adding mimosas. We go outside of that. So we are doing breakfast cocktails. We do a Bloody Mary that people come in for, and the espresso martinis, a couple other just like tequila sunrise, only 5 or 6 alcohol or liquor SKUs. Obviously, we're based out of Kentucky. I don't think I said that, but so we have to have some sort of bourbon-y drinks. So we definitely have our take of an old fashioned and just some of those elements. Alcohol overall only makes up about 7% of our mix of food and bev, but it's really important because it differentiates us. And then also the cost of goods on alcohol are typically a little better than others.
Better margins on that. Yeah. And it makes it a really fun weekend experience for folks. Yes, or weekday. I don't know. No judgments.
No judgment. Yeah, we typically have like groups of nurses, for instance, that get off shift at 7 a.m. and they come in. So we'll have, for a while, and here locally, I think we still do it. We do this kind of early morning happy hour just for kicks, and that's always fun.
Well, that's a great point, right? A lot of people coming off late shift, like this is, the equivalent of their happy hour. So, being accommodating to those folks too. Okay. So Lauren, you and your husband originally went to school and worked as pharmacists.
Correct.
Now, pharmacist, that's a pretty good job. Like, what drew you sort of away from that and into opportunities outside of pharmacies?
Pharmacy is a good job. It's very tough. And I think it's probably one of the more undervalued elements of healthcare that people can be pretty nasty. Now, I worked in retail, and I feel like that my many years working there really set me up for success on focusing down on the customer and, what they want, kind of creating that element of being a yes person that I think adds value to our team overall. My husband took a job teaching at a pharmacy school. And so that was very different. And he really enjoyed it, actually. But he just always had this itch to do something else and to do something where he's running his own thing. And so when we met, the first night that we met, he said to me, someday I'm going to own my own business. And I think at the time he thought it would be a pharmacy, own his own pharmacy. But, as you grow and you learn a bit about pharmacy, how the sausage gets made, it's like, maybe we'll stay away from that. So we kind of ventured into these paint and drink places. It was called Uptown Art. And we opened two of those were great. As a new business owner, there was a very low barrier to entry. So the pricing, everything was very low. It didn't cost a lot to build out the space. And again, I think the best thing about that is it really taught us the element of customer service and just creating a overall quality experience. So if you've never been to one of these, you come in, there's a teacher at the front like teaching you how to paint something. And on Friday and Saturday nights, I mean, we would pack in 70 people in there, learning how to paint a fleur-de-lis. Like there's got everybody in this city of Louisville has to have a dang fleur-de-lis hanging in there.
My wife's been to one of these. She loved
Yes.
it. Had a glass of wine. Yep. Came back
Yep.
with a painting that she had no idea that she was even capable of. Yeah.
Correct.
It's a good time.
And the more people enjoy the wine, the better the paintings get, But really, people were coming and they were drinking our wine. And to be candid, our wine was not good. Like it was just kind of cheap, whatever wine. And being in Louisville, where bourbon is so big, bourbonism, bourbon tourism is so large, we really saw this space and this need for a wine-focused restaurant that wasn't hoity. So a very approachable place where you could get just a glass of a $200 bottle if you wanted to. So we opened Louisville and ultimately grew that to 5 locations. And our differentiator there was we had, in our heyday, had 60, 70 wines by the glass. And they were just each one, as we grew, they just got so beautiful. Our first one was very simple and we kept it, neat and clean and just a very simple layout. But then as we grew, adding in some real character and elements of, fancy was really important. So we had 2 of those here in Louisville, 2 in Indianapolis area, and 1 in Cincinnati. Through all of that, my husband was like, we should open a biscuit place. And I was saying, nobody in Louisville is going to want these biscuits. Like, we're from Georgia. People here are not that country. And we started meeting with our chef from Louisville and just having kind of tastings, like fun tastings. And we started spending time like dealing with branding and creating a name and a logo and what would this look like and the colors and what are the things you want people to feel when they walk inside. Like Biscuit Belly was the first thing that we did where we took a real forward thinking approach instead of just like, hey, let's do this today. So it was really intentional. And the thing that I love is even though, our menus have changed over time, some of those core pieces are staying, what we want people to feel when they walk inside, kind of our personality. All of that has been set from the get-go. And it really helps us as we're even just hiring and firing. It's kind of helped us around our core value piece. How can we be this authentic thing of who and what we were and who and what we are in our core and still evolve? So,
let me ask a few follow-up questions on this, Lauren.
Yeah.
So you and your husband kind of had the hankering to start something. When you first met him, even from very early on, he said, I want to own my own business one day, thought it would be a pharmacy. You made the comment that once you kind of see how the sausage is made, like, what was it about the pharmacy industry in particular that you were like, thanks, but no thanks?
Well, I worked for a large insurance provider and I transitioned from retail to a large insurance provider. And when you just see the reimbursement, for instance, on medications, you have to really just pump them out to make any money. There isn't any sort of dollar value attached for that.
The service.
Yeah, like the experience piece or the engagement piece between you and your customer. And That's probably what troubles most people in pharmacy. And to be candid, I hope that nobody who's listening is in pharmacy school, but I can't tell you how many DMs I get from people that were in my pharmacy class or other pharmacists that are like, how did you do this? How did you get out? I went out. And so I don't miss that element of it at all. I think most pharmacists get into it because they want to help people, and really, you're just kind of like a machine, to get the meds out as quick as possible. So
Gotcha.
it wasn't for me. It's for a lot of people, but it just wasn't for me.
Understood. You had other things that you wanted to try, and so you and your husband, you started one of those the Uptown Art, one of the paint and have a glass of wine. That kind of led to the idea of opening up Louisville. Is Louisville still around? Is this still?
We sold it in 2020, but
Okay.
It is still around some of the locations. They chose to open other things in some of the locations, and
So you've got Louisville, you've got, what did you say, 5 or 6 locations, and then you're like, oh, this is going well. Rather than opening more locations of this concept that we've kind of figured out, well, let's shift gears entirely and get into biscuits.
well, I think the thing there was, so we opened 2 here in Louisville, and then we opened a couple in like 2 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
And we really struggled with having the right people to be able to have oversight and engagement so that it didn't feel like we were 2 hours away. Opening a brick and mortar place hours from where you live is so much more challenging than you think it's going to be. And I think we knew we can't grow this anymore. Let's try something new. And then ultimately, this was kind of like the newer thing. My husband is always like thinking about, well, what can we do next? What can we do next? And I have to reel that in. Like, I'm like, no. But at the time, he was thinking about what could be next. And we truly opened Biscuit Belly thinking it could be something we would grow in those same cities. Mm. But then once we kind of saw the what's it called? Just the unit economics of it.
Yeah. The financials, it looked better for biscuits than it did for Louisville.
And I mean, Louisville, Biscuit Belly became something where we realized, hey, this is franchisable. Like the unit economics made it so it has a lower barrier to entry. We could grow, essentially with other people's money. We could bring in experts and them not be on our payroll. They could be franchise partners. And so all of that looked appealing. And then the concept itself was appealing, from a franchise lens. So additionally, Louisville was very expensive to open. With 60, 70 wines by the glass, you have pretty intense training. And so we knew the value in having something that, essentially you could have somebody start working in on day one, whereas Louisville, you really couldn't do that. So just little things like that really matter. Like they all add up, when you're making these bigger decisions.
So when did the first Biscuit Belly open?
In 2019.
So right before COVID.
Right before COVID, yes. May of 2019.
May of 2019. How were those first 6-8 months before COVID hit?
Oh, I mean, they were awesome. We opened one in May, and I mean, 2 months in, my husband's like scouring, trying to find a place for another location. We found one and opened it in December of 2019. So we had 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fast.
It was very fast. That was a second gen space. So it didn't need, all the build out work that often comes with opening restaurants. It was previously a Zoe's. So it had kind of a similar setup as we were looking for with the queue line and everything. So it was just kind of a great opportunity to step into that space, and we could do it for cheap.
A lot of restaurateurs that I talk to, they open one location and it's a grind for many years before they kind of finally start to get things figured out. Things are clicking for them. And they're like, okay, now we can think about opening a second location. You guys went through that in a span of about 6 or 7 months of like, not only is this working well enough that we would like to open a new one, but you actually got it opened.
Well, I think that speaks to all the work that was done prior to opening the first store. Like, I think that a lot of times people open a restaurant without really figuring out who they are, what they want to be in that space. And then, I think if you know those things going into it, it makes a lot of the question marks very easy to answer. So, I'm not going to say it was all perfect. I'm sure like we had, our cost of goods was high and it wasn't ideal, but it was still making great money. And I mean, our issue was we would have a line around the door. We would have people driving by and they would see the line and be like, oh, never mind, we'll go somewhere else. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this again so that they can just, divide and conquer here.
How were those first days? Like, how did you get people in the door the first time? I mean, it's one thing when you've got that line going around the door. Yes, you do have some people who are going to keep going, say, I don't have time for that. But it's also like very eye-catching, great word of mouth. Like, that place must be good. We're going to have to put that on our to-do list. Yep. But how did you kind of get the hype going in the early days? I
mean, Louisville is such a foodie town. People I don't think appreciate that until they come and visit. We have Sullivan University is a big like chef maker here, and a lot of great chefs, Michelin star, or they've been on TV or, been on Top Chef. They are here in Louisville. And so the restaurant community is also oddly tight. So at our soft openings, I mean, other chefs are coming in, they're all friends. They all like help each other instead of it being like a combative space. It's kind of this, everyone, if we help, everyone will do better. And I really just am thankful that we have that sort of environment. It almost hurts you because if you were not on your P's and Q's, like on day one, then you get, knocked around a little bit. So we learned that with Louisville. Opening, we thought, oh gosh, it's going to take forever to get people in here. And that was not the case. So just a different, the more Biscuit Belly locations we open outside of Louisville, the more I've learned, like that's a little bit unique here.
In terms of people give you a little bit more grace when you're first opening, or you're a little bit slower for people to discover you?
No, that they are ready to come. Like they are looking for the new thing. They want to be at, the new spot, and they aren't sitting back and waiting for some sort of marketing to come to them. People are actively searching it out here. And so I think a learning curve for us has been in a market, in a new market, like we just opened in Charlotte, where we had no presence in North Carolina. We're in Raleigh, but that's far enough that it was tough. But they've opened 2 stores within 2 months of each other, and really had to like, okay, how do we get people in the door? And then once we got that happening, but we really had to amp up our PR and marketing efforts for those locations just because we were the new kid on the block and people were not searching out.
Do you feel like that has anything to do with maybe biscuit places are a bit more common in the South? And so people are like, oh, another biscuit place. Whereas, where you guys were in Louisville, this was a little bit new, a little bit novel. Niche. Like, oh, yeah, this is something cool. Let's try it.
100%. I do think that's part of it. There's other concepts that have opened that maybe the experience is lacking. And so people will think, oh, if this is the same sort of fast casual experience, I don't want to go blow my money there. But then we are often called out in reviews like, don't go to X, go to Biscuit Belly.
Wow.
The experience is better. And so that really shows you
that's powerful.
The difference. Yeah. In what people are saying and just the value of the experience. Like we can't put a dollar value on that, but how important we can put a dollar value on how, that Yelp review or that Google review, so I just think that piece, us focusing hard on that has been the thing that sets us apart and made us.
So very easy to get people into the door in your original Louisville locations. The two locations you're talking about, North Carolina, was a little bit slower early on. And it sounds like you guys tried some marketing. What did you do that worked to kind of help flip the switch there?
A couple of things. I think one thing that worked for them was that they did open two really close together, not in terms of location, but from a time span perspective. And so we were able to kind of attack a bigger market and leverage those dollars probably a little bit better. But really, we do a lot at Biscuit Belly leaning into the influencer piece. I mean, that has been really key, I think, in the success of a lot of our stores. And then, gosh, I mean, I think having and working with some PR folks that are unique to an area is really important. We've in the past used like national PR brands and that's great. And they do a great job. But when you're opening localized stores, like there is something about, the anchor at the local CBS affiliate who knows this person and works with them all the time. And I think that really helped us. We shifted gears on that front a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more about the franchise opportunity. It sounds like very quickly you guys had some traction of your own. You're like, oh, we're onto something here. People love the food. They love the menu. They love the overall ambiance and the experience. We're going to open up some of our own locations additionally, but like we really are onto something here. Like the way to really grow this quickly is through the franchising model. And so what does that look like? Why is that something people should consider?
Well, for us, how do I even start this? I mean, I think that when I think of challenges and yet great outcomes, I mean, franchising is such a beast. And how many times I've heard now people be like, I'm just going to start franchising my blah. And I am like, oh my gosh, like there's so much.
It's a lot of work that goes into it.
No. Yes.
Huge legal expense, lots of processes to build out.
Oh, yeah.
You got to document everything.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, on one hand, it is incredible. When you look at some of our operators, like we've been lucky enough to partner with a number of franchise partners who love working with early stage brands, and who are great at helping us. Like they know, okay, this isn't working. What can we do? And they know they can come to us and like, we can figure stuff out together. That's the beauty of working with a small brand. But then there's also that challenge of like, we're trying to attract these really high level franchisees. And we got to make sure then that our systems would support, would be something that they would want to come to, right? So it's definitely been a challenging space to be in. The best sales tool, the best franchise sales tool you can have is your current franchisees. And so ensuring that they have a good experience is paramount. And, I think for Chad and I, like Chad, he loves working. He wants to work every second of the day. Like that is his, he loves working. And so he has always been great to respond quickly, to be a sounding board when needed. Like he takes, anytime a franchise partner calls, he is answering that phone and talking to them. And I think that has benefited us. And then sometimes it kind of hurts us. Like we want to grow bigger and faster and be able to have all these team members to do all the things, but we have to be fiscally responsible. So our team is pretty small. I mean, it's me and Chad, and then we have a VP of training, a VP of operations, and a marketing director. And that is the core for all the functions of the work that we do. So, time is our limited resource.
So for those folks out there who maybe they're looking for an opportunity, they're considering some different franchises, what do you think sets Biscuit Belly apart from some other things they might be looking at?
I think that first of all, our time, like our breakfast and lunch day parts, we can attract a team member or an employee base that I would say is a bit higher, like kind of a higher quality team member, because the people who are saying, yes, sign me up for a job where I come in and bake biscuits at 6:30, like they're not going out and getting crazy the night before. So we often have team members who are moms who they love this because they can come into work and then pick up their kid from school every day and be a part of the evening activities. So I think that piece has really, it's really important, especially now post-COVID, where work at home is such a thing that people want. I think focusing on the team member experience, like the companies that are doing that are the ones that are thriving. So that's one kind of value add or value prop that we would have. The other is that there just isn't a whole lot, like there's a lot of opportunity in this space. We're not talking about pizza or hamburgers, like
just not a lot of competition. People doing something similar to you.
Yes.
You guys are different from a lot of the other opportunities that are out
there.
Yes.
Yeah. And the ones that are there, you've got some awesome full service options, but they're, maybe a little higher price point. Sometimes people don't want to do the full on, sit service sort of feel. So I don't know, I just feel like we've got a really good thing going with what we do. Even just the people to run our locations. The fact that we aren't full service means that we don't have to have as many bodies, in the stores. So,
and it sounds like maybe as compared to other fast casual environments, maybe you don't have quite the same level of employee turnover.
We don't. It is, fascinating to me. I love that we have, team members. I was putting up a couple of our team members' anniversaries. Like, I just have like a big year calendar for everyone to kind of see, and here's everything happening. And I always put in anniversaries and birthdays on it. And we've got 4-year and 5-year team members. I'm like, good grief. Like, it really hits you hard that this is their, this is kind of a lifer brand, because it does help with that work-life balance. When our front of house, when they close at 2, they're often out by 2:30. So I think, and on weekends we close at 3. If they're out, like that means they can still go to a friend's birthday party. They can still do all these things. So all of that kind of helps us, I think, level up as compared to some of the competitors out there.
I know one of the ways that you kind of frame the experience there at Biscuit Belly is kind of about Southern flavor, Southern hospitality. Can you talk about what that means to you personally, Lauren, and how you kind of have that shine through the brand experience for the customer?
Oh, yeah. That has been the most important thing. So biscuits is in our name. We want people to know we make our biscuits from scratch every single day. And so we're talking about in the mornings, they are making a small thing of dough to get through a morning rush, to give them time to make a full thing of dough. It is a process, and a number of the things that we do in-house, our jam is made in-house. Like, so much of what we do is literally made with love. And so in the last 2 to 3 openings that we've had, we decided to bring the guest kind of into that experience by way of having a window that they can actually see into our kitchen. They can see, and it's right in front of the biscuit makers, station. And so, when we were going down this path, we're like, what if somebody, a piece of hair falls and somebody picks it and, you're like, ah, but it has been nothing but great. People like,
and sorry, Lauren, this is a window that's inside of the restaurant where they can see into the back kitchen, or this is on like an exterior wall?
No, it's inside the restaurant.
Okay, got it.
So when guests are coming through the queue line, they see that team member, rolling out the dough and punching the biscuits. I mean, they get to be a piece of it. And on weekends, especially when maybe the line's a little longer, our biscuit makers will often like take dough and kind of throw it at the window at kids, or just try to bring in that element of experience so that people know like this is not just popped in an oven. This is like made fresh. And we have to let them rise, and then they go in the oven. And I mean, it's a whole thing. And if you've got to time it. If you let it overcook, it's no bueno. So just focusing in on that piece, I think, has been key, because growing up, like, my mom wasn't a big cooker, but one of my best friends, her grandma, Dit Dot, she made fresh biscuits every single morning. And so for me, waking up in this country house and getting up and running in there to get some biscuit, like, that was joy to me. And oddly enough, my friend's mom was named Joy. That's funny. But bringing kind of a piece of that, even though, maybe you're not running out. Let's be honest, very few people know how to make like homemade delicious biscuits. And so if we could bring that element, that's the key. That's the food side. I think the experience side, again, is just as important. I mean, it's so important, actually. When we met in December to kind of look at 2025, and we run on EOS, so we're doing our annual offsite, and my husband is just like, whatever he's into, I call it gate. Like, we had bacon gate for a while, we have yogurt parfait gate. Now it's like experience gate. And it's almost to the point where I'm like, oh my dear God, what do we need to do so that you feel heard and you feel like, we are acting on these things? But I mean, he rolled it out to our whole system, on in the first week of January. Like, having somebody as a designated guest ambassador is where he wants it to say, Lauren, guest ambassador, and that be my only job. And so
for the entire company, or at each location?
At each location. So as they are deploying, team members who are picking up food, who are delivering your coffee, delivering your food, he wants there to be a designated person, and he's willing to put the money, pay for that person to be the guest ambassador. So he wants them to come up and say, hey, Anthony, not just how was your experience, but are you guys visiting? Are you around here? Like, have that kind of special touch. And so that's why, I mean, he's just focused hard. And I will say, there is all sorts of data to show that if there's some like stat that he digs into with us, like, if people have one bad experience, they are 47% less likely to go back or something like that to a restaurant. That says something. I mean, that is dollars. Like, we've spent so much money acquiring this new customer, and then for them to not come back for something that's avoidable is just nuts. Yeah. So really leveling up that. And then for the last, I guess, 18 months now, in 23, we made this thing like, no more systems, no new systems. We're going to try to, because like when you start a business, you have 100,000 salespeople coming at you. Like, look, you could buy this and do this. You could buy this, you could do this. And ultimately, you have to decide, like, that data or that system is awesome, but I don't even have a person that can manage it right now, And so in 23, we really were like, no new systems, and also what can we scale back? And so we kind of systematically scaled back, and we added one system, and it's called Ovation, and it helps us speak to our guest. So after you come in, you get a text that just says, hey, 2 questions, or two questions. How was your experience? And you rate it according to emojis, like from a smiley face down to a mad face. And if it's a 4 or 5, like a extra smiley or a happy, it pushes them to leave a review. If it's a 3 or less, then we say what happened, and it communicates that right to the store operator and allows the operator to speak immediately to that guest and to fix the issue, so that then they aren't taking to the Google Airways and blasting us.
Right.
The guest recovery piece is so important, and so that has been one of the best elements that we've added over the last 3 years, just so that we can talk more to the guests. And it allows you to look at like root things, like what are we consistently seeing? Where do we need to inject some training? It's really helped with all of that.
I've never met your husband, but I feel like I know him because I have many of the same elements in me. Very common traits in lots of entrepreneurs that I talk to. You're always coming up with new ideas. You're always looking for ways to turn the dials and tweak things on ideas that are already working. I'm curious, does that kind of parlay into the food experience? Like, are you guys always like experimenting with new foods, or since you've been open for a few years now, do you feel like the menu is kind of set where it is?
I feel like our menu is pretty set, but I think we have to always have an element of seeing and noticing what's around and leaning into it so that you can stay relevant. Obviously, a good way to do this is through limited time offerings. And we've had a variety of those over the last 3 to 4 years. And this is the first year where we're just like rinse and repeating the ones that work. So we took a pretty data-driven approach to the last 2 years of LTOs. And we're like, okay, let's skinny this down. What were the things that were absolutely loved? And we really are trying to just make that better. Now, I love what you said just now about taking something that works and turning the dial a little bit, because that's a really nice way of saying it. I mean, yes, my husband is a classic visionary, and I am a classic like, no, it's fine. It's fine. I don't want to change it. Like, I want it to be the same. So it's a really good, this visionary guy with this, like, what can we actually roll out, push out? What do we have the bandwidth or even the, skill set to do right now? Like, I think that's what makes us a good team.
And it's so important, and it can be very difficult to sort of find that balance between the integrator and the visionary, and especially when it's a married couple, who, you're sharing your entire lives together. And I've seen this sort of play out in different instances, and sometimes it can be helpful for that visionary to have a hobby outside of work where they can kind of turn the dials and tinker and, kind of scratch that part of their brain that needs scratched on a regular basis, just to kind of keep them from maybe fiddling with something that doesn't need fiddled with.
I have come to appreciate this more and more. Like, in the last year, I'll write my mother-in-law like notes, and I'll say, well, Chad wants to go buy this old car and, tinker around with it for 2 years and then sell it. And I'm like, at least it's not a restaurant. And then like, we'll get an email from his dad, and it's like, look at this old Woody I bought, like this old car. And I'm just like, oh, he gets this honest. But to your point, it does shift the gears a little bit in ways that don't impact our team. Like, it impacts me, but it keeps them safe.
And that's important. Yeah. You don't want to give them whiplash, sort of changing directions too.
Oh yeah. And yes.
Lauren, I understand that community involvement plays a pretty big role in your business model. I'm curious to hear how local partnerships have kind of helped to shape the growth and the culture there at Biscuit Belly.
That's a great question. I think that is something that we've spent 3 years. So we opened in 2019. 2020 was COVID. And I mean, just the chaos that ensued there. was we were just treading water, like little ducks, and it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, over a year ago, we were actually at our annual meeting last December, and it really became clear that we were disjointed from a community involvement perspective. And we would get asks and we'd give out gift cards and we'll do those things, but we were not being intentional around any of our, like, who do we want to align with and what do we want to do. So we've spent some time overall, when you talk to our team members, they like for us to focus down on organizations that help with food insecurity. So we've gotten a bit more involved with an organization, Feed Louisville here, and they have like a waste aspect. They'll come pick up your leftover food, but then some other kind of community giving aspects. I think that has been really key in just the awareness of, like, hey, we're lucky we get to serve all these people, but they can also afford to come in here and spend $25 on them and their partner for breakfast. So let's figure out ways that we can help people that maybe can't do that. And it's not always directly through food, but it's ultimately like food pantry, food, dividing things up and making bags and like just things like that. Getting involved with the community on that front has been important. Personally, especially after COVID, I mean, I was always the type of person to say yes to things and to always, hey, can you be on this committee, or can you help put on this event, or can you help? And I would always say yes, yes, yes. And then COVID kind of forced us all to like shut it down. And then I just became very particular about what I added back. Does that make sense? So now I feel like I do a whole lot less, but I'm able to give more to
focused.
Yes.
Yeah, your efforts are more focused in that community involvement now. Lauren, we've sort of touched on this. I've heard you mention COVID several times, but we haven't really talked about what that was like for you guys going through it. March 17th hits, everybody's got to close their doors, figure out a different way. What did you guys do? Were you able to do curbside? Were you able to pivot at all?
Yeah, we were. It was not pretty. My poor husband, when you tell a visionary, like, turn your brain off, I think that like, it was definitely some of the darkest times in our lives, and oddly enough, I had worked at this insurance company for 9 years, I think, and I had scaled back to part-time years ago to just help Chad. But in December of 2019, when we really were like, okay, we're going to grow Biscuit Belly, I put in my notice for March 15th or whatever. Like, I gave them plenty of notice to transition. And my last day, they had a lunch brought in, and that was the day that everyone at that company got an email saying, we've had our first employee with COVID, everyone go home. And so they were literally like waiting on this lunch to come in for me, and then everyone left. And I mean, they have not been back like in the same, since. So I left this, great job to basically just make sure my husband was okay. Like, I mean, I could have probably stayed at that point, but I was like, I need to make sure he's okay. And, it was like everything coming down. One day, you can apply for this, and one day you can do that. And then, the next day, actually no. And, you have to have 1 million employees. And it was just like the communication was so challenging. And then on top of that, again, what I said, like, that visionary mind just being told, like, sit down and shut up, you can't do anything right now. That was wild. And so those were challenging times. Now, there was two good things that came out of it. Number one, I mean, prior to that, we did not do any takeout. Like, we didn't need to, we didn't want to. Takeout costs so much more because of all the paper and plastic, and it requires even more time to put things in a box and put that box in a bag and then get that to where it's going, as compared to just an order in a restaurant. Additionally, when you're thinking about third-party delivery services, I mean, these people, they take 30% of your top line revenue. I mean, it's just a racket. And so that was definitely a struggle, but we learned how to then do this takeout. We learned how to do it well. As we started growing, we were able to negotiate a little bit with some of these companies. We were able to figure out, prior to franchising, like, how do we make this easy? Because at the time, DoorDash would send you a tablet and Uber Eats would send you a tablet, and you'd have all these this hardware, and it was such a pain to deal with. And so we figured out, okay, we need to invest in this space. We need to make it so that the team doesn't have to have tablets. It needs to be a seamless experience for our team members. And so we learned a lot in that time. We also learned, hey, throwing gravy on that biscuit and sending it with a DoorDash driver for 25 minutes, by the time the guest gets it, it's like, bleh. Yeah. So we learned the things that we needed to change to be, to function well in that space. And then the other thing was, that is really the time we spent developing the franchise stuff. So we launched franchising in October of 2020. And that was because we were pretty much able to designate, 6 months to, like, that was the focus. That became the things that we were going to work on. And so it allowed my husband that sense of purpose, kind of reinvigorated that visionary piece. And so that was the only other good thing that came out of it. I mean, even now, takeout's still 27% of our business. Like, it's not going away.
Right. And things have shifted. It's a much bigger percentage of most fast casual dining environments now.
Yep.
For sure. So we talked about sort of this, the particular challenge of COVID, but maybe aside from that, Lauren, I'm kind of curious to hear from you as you think back over your life, your career, maybe a serious challenge, a different one that you have experienced, overcome, and what that was like and some lessons learned going through it.
I would say one of the toughest lessons for me was more around the people aspect. I think, so when we opened Biscuit Belly, we hired a couple people that were from Louisville, had been with us for years, that we loved. And we're like, this is a good, cool opportunity for you to do something new, and as a way to elevate them. And I remember early on when I went to a conference of sorts for emerging franchisors, this guy did a talk, and he was saying, look, the people that get you to store 4 and 5, they're not the same as the people that can get you to store 30 or 40. And I remember being like, whatever, like, these people will be with us forever. And, as you grow and you realize, man, we don't have the A+ players, the A+ talent to get us where we need to go. That is hard.
That's a hard reckoning. These are people that you care a great deal about. They've given you everything that they've got. Yeah.
Yes. And you do a lot of self-searching, because you, here, I'm almost setting this person up for failure because I'm angry that they cannot accomplish X, Y, and Z, but they've never done that before. Yeah. So, there is internal struggles with that. Being an early stage brand, how in the heck am I supposed to get an A+ person who's done this before when they make, 250 grand at these other brands. Like, how do we do this? And so there's a lot of that. Like, okay, well, what can we not have to afford something like that? And I think all of that was really challenging. I don't I do not like for somebody to not like me. Like, I'm one of those people. I want everyone to like me. Now, I don't have to be your favorite person, but like, I would hope Anthony would leave and be like, man, that's a nice human. She's a good, kind person. And I was decent at holding people accountable, not great. But once I was having to really hold people accountable to things that they didn't know how or what to do, I mean, that's on me. Like, I never gave them the tools to be able to accomplish those things. So we had to go back to the drawing board and really evaluate, like, what can we do? What do we want to do? And what can we afford to do? That Venn diagram is really quirky. So, we had to let go of some people. Ultimately, it was the best decision of both of our times. When you look back, you're like, we should have done that a long time before. But
it's so hard and painful in the moment.
It is so hard.
You've got a personal bond with those people.
Yeah. The people aspect is definitely the toughest.
Yeah. Lauren, I've just got one more question for you, but before I ask it, I want to do two things. First of all, everyone listening today, I know that you love today's content because Lauren has been a A+ guest. So please hit the share, like, or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Lauren, I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with you. What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, my email, I answer my email, lauren.coulter@biscuitbelly.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'll be candid. I get hit up by probably 50 salespeople a week. So it's hard for me to differentiate the outreach. If people write, not a salesperson, or, hey, heard you here, like, I'll be like, okay. But usually if I don't, if it's past the first couple of lines and I feel like it's a sales pitch, I'm like, next.
Time's limited. Yep. You got to find some efficiencies there.
Yes.
So we'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile as well as your email address. Lauren is spelled LAUREN at biscuitbelly.com. So last question for you, Lauren. I'm kind of curious to hear, what do you see are the big changes coming in your industry in the next couple of years?
I think the focus down on experience is going to continue. Like, I don't think that's going to go away. This is hard.
Is there more of a movement to tech? I hear some people talking about AI. Are you guys thinking about or leaning into that yet?
We are not, because we are so focused on experience, we are not leaning all the way in to tech from a guest perspective. We are leaning into it in ways that it'll help our team members. But, how many times have the people selling like the things where people could just walk up and order? I mean, that is key. We are not that brand. Like, that is not us. I think anything that can decrease friction between us and the guest is going to thrive. Anything kind of like Ovation, anything where we can hear from the guests before, like, hear their anger or their sentiment prior to them going and putting it on review sites. I think those pieces will thrive. I think that we're going to see more like consolidation, but more from a like brands kind of closing and shifting into fewer locations, only because I think the consumer is willing to pay a premium for quality. I think the days of like, I think the days of like 2 for $2 stuff is dwindling. I think people are like, what is that I'm eating? And I think that's where Biscuit Belly can level up a bit. I mean, we are putting in, we're purchasing high quality product. And yeah, it's a higher price point, but like what you're putting in your body.
I mean, people can
So
literally see you, not making the
making,
sausage, but making the biscuits, right? You've
yes,
got that window now where people can see what that process is like. Like, oh, that's
yep,
handmade from scratch,
yep.
right now, just right before I put it in my belly.
They can see us opening, getting bags of berries and putting it on the skillet and, cooking it down. And I mean, they can see so much of that. And I think that piece is more and more important to the consumer. Just knowing what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Lauren, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.